The events that are currently transpiring are summoning us to reform many structures, such as healthcare, such as economy, even education. And we have faced the crises many times before, and we will experience the crises many times more in our future. A crisis is basically a call for reform, and this particular crisis is bringing a collapse in many ways in many people's lives, and that collapse is simply for rebirth, as we know. And the direction that we're needed to go into, as you can say, United States of America, as well as our sort of healthcare, as well as our sort of economy and our education, is going to be in a direction similar to what we see in Canada with the free healthcare, as well as free education, as well as there are a lot of North European countries as well that are pioneering a new model of sort of like a healthcare economy, education, among many sort of structures for the future, right? A more secure, solid future. And we are really looking at these areas that we've kind of sort of ignored, or sort of just like, healthcare, right? Or we're looking at all the student loan and the student debt, and how seemingly insane that is for a lot of young people, particularly millennials who, like 30 to almost like 25 years old, who have like 30,000, 40,000, sometimes even like $80,000 to $100,000 in debt over their student loans, right? And when we look at our economy during this crisis, we realize how unstable it is, in the way that only like a month or 2 months, 3 months, many people will basically be closing their businesses. Many people will even experience bankruptcy, right? And many people are feeling very shaken and very ungrounded, because we are being asked to take on a different model for these many areas that we don't really put much energy into actually making these changes, right? And sometimes in order to actually move the energy, you have to actually have it sometimes forced, right? You have to have a situation that happens in order for you to kind of get things going in a new direction, right? And a lot of like North European countries, among other countries, are pioneering a sort of new model that is sort of for the future, right? A more future paradigm. And I think whatever collapse may be happening in these many sort of structures, and the overall sort of main, like the backbone of us, right? That kind of the vertebrae that create the backbone of us, right? From healthcare to education to economy, many things. They are basically we're going to be looking at things, even when we think of the pollution, and how you can look at the major cities and you can see that the air quality is a lot better, and even looking at the cities is a lot clearer, right? Because of the pollution is declining, right? The air quality is improving in many ways, right? So all of these little things that we all kind of felt, right, we needed to make these necessary changes. But before this event, we were just like go, like gun-ho, like, we have a president that basically is about the whole go, right? Profit. The whole leadership for him is based off of he's basically a master of economics, right? Like, right, that's his main sort of study. So that's kind of the thing we've been in, as you could say, Americans, is kind of following in that footstep of like, go and make that money. And I feel like a lot of us are now at the standstill because it's not just about having that sort of mindset. It's also about knowing how to have the ideas and to have the courage to implement these innovative ideas that go beyond just economics, that go beyond just our sort of status in the economic field and with other sort of nations. So when we see these sort of collapses, that definitely the healthcare for sure, and not just us as a nation, other nations. When we think of education, right, many people cannot pay off their student loans, right, because they're laid off, they're furloughed. I mean, they're getting, unemployment, but still that is for many millennials very, very shaky, right? So that is basically going to force us into a position where we are going to basically jump into a new model for these many structures. And it's kind of in our favor when we think of it as the people, right? We can get into all these conspiracies and get into all these rabbit holes with all these particular agendas, right? There are probably multiple agendas stacked up on each other, but a lot of the agendas are probably just, they're all, it's all kind of leading into our favor when it comes to making these sort of changes that some of us are in many ways like, no, like, let's just keep it as it is. Let's just keep it what we've been running with, just follow the lead, right, of the president. But with ideas such as Bernie Sanders that seem kind of, to many people, kind of revolutionary, right? In the ideas of having, you could say, higher taxes, which people go berserk, right? They get their guns out when they hear that, right? It seems like that, right? Especially in the South, you can kind of see that with free healthcare and free education, and that seems like, no, right? We're like, no, right? It almost goes against everything that we are about, right? But these kinds of ideas were actually ideas that are very successful in other nations, that we, again, some of the nations can be smaller than when we think of like the North European countries. They're relatively not, smaller population, smaller sort of land mass than us. But when we think of Canada as well, very functional, right? There's a stability to that, and we're talking about, we want to focus more on the longevity, and there really is no longevity in these kinds of student debts, that people even in their 40s are still, 40s, 50s are still kind of, and a lot of even millennials can have this, and then they go into a job making minimum wage, and they're still not even able, have 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and still not able to actually maintain the life, right? Or sustain the life, to not just sustain, but to thrive in the life. And then when we think of the healthcare and the that sort of that pool of energy, it in the longevity will be moved into a new system, right? And when we think of this crisis that is happening right now, it really is going to basically, like I said, push us into we have these ideas, they're there, right? It's just we don't want to implement them. We don't want to challenge previous structures, right? If it's the kind of saying is, if it's not broke, or don't fix it type of thing, right? But if it's kind of sort of like rusting, right, it's like eventually it's gonna break, right? Like it's just some sort of rusting metal, like that's withering away. Eventually it's going to snap. And with the future of this planet and our part in it is very much going to demand that not just young people have like a associate's degree, but people have the opportunity to even get a master's degree or their PhD, because with this technology advancements, we're going to need, right, more smart people, so that the what we call the IA, AI, the artificial intelligence doesn't sort of, the whole thing of the computers outsmarting us, right? And I feel with our government, especially as, United States of America, I feel when it comes to higher taxes, we don't necessarily trust our government, because we have seen our government in many ways that you've shown, traits of not being trustworthy. Even when it comes going all the way back to the early days with the sort of Trail of Tears and the sort of basically targeting of Native Americans, that's something that's one of many that has caused a sort of distrust in the government, and that's why we're not so, feel so comfortable giving these, taxes to the government, because they have shown qualities of being greedy, of hoarding, right, of not really showing us, right, not really giving us what we are giving out to them, right, not being true to their promises. I mean, this is, kinds of things that we know, right? But I feel as we do, like Bernie Sanders, focus more on education, instead of just like, I got my degree, but now I just have to work at any job, 2-3 jobs, minimum wage, just to pay this off, and I'm not focused on actually being, having ideas. That is actually going to breed generations who are actually going to have this sort of well-roundedness of this, globalization, to be brought into these positions of, senators and congressmen and women, and even presidency, that are going to have more of these virtues that you gain through the character development. That it is basically our excellence, our great victory or triumph, to have that character development that in many ways can be feeling deprived to even certain ethnic groups who don't have as much of the privilege to have that character development, right? But what we're facing now with this major crisis is character development in the form of what is our character in our healthcare, what is our character in our economy and our education, because those are just 3 areas I'm focusing on, because those are 3 areas that we kind of go a little dance with it, right? Kind of a little dance with it. We don't really, we kind of play chicken with it, right? We want to do it, move the energy, but then, keep it as it is. If it's not broken, don't fix it, type of thing. But like if it's rutting at the same, rutting at the baseline, then yeah, it's gonna wither away. So I, as a Gen Z, a part of one of the can say the youngest generation, with the Gen Y, the babies, I guess, wanted to share this perspective, right? One of many perspectives regarding the events, and how that is in our favor, in the way that the overall agenda, the sort of omega, the supreme agenda of, right, of all agendas, is for us to get into a new paradigm. You can call it a new earth. You can call it basically a sort of new government, a new structure. And this is kind of a subtle, right? We've had revolutions of like French Revolution. We've had one of so many, you just spinning out, right, that have been aggressive, right? This is very subtle compared to other revolutions that have happened, that basically were to shake up a sort of structure, even, something in the government, something in society, even with religious reasons, right? And this is a subtle sort of act of reformation,